Now, that tune was nowhere near as good as what you are going to be invited to listen to at some point in the next half an hour. Peter Griffiths, welcome to the Right Here, Right Now show, mate. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, well, for anyone that may have seen us advertising this gathering of Peter and I, where do we start, Peter? We're talking about the creative process. It is a right here, right now conversation. We haven't planned it. We've not scripted anything. We just knew that we wanted to share the experience of creativity from a very pure source. So, yeah, where do we go next, Peter? I'd love for you to what was it like for you to have me come to you and go, hey, Peter, I've got this idea. Can you make me a tune?
I'm always blessed when people are interested in, my art, because it's a big part of my life, right? So, and especially, the backstory, right? We've been getting to know each other over the last 6 to 8 months, or maybe longer, right? And for you to approach me, it was totally out of the blue, so it was a nice surprise. And my first question is always around curiosity, right? So I was like, okay, so for what purpose? Well, what would you do with it? And I think that's what carried us forward. That's, for me, it's the curiosity bit. And when you said I would love to have a track that would represent the work that I'm doing and what emerges in the future, I was like, wow, that sounds like a cool project. Yeah.
And just for a bit of context for anyone that's joining us today, and hey, hello, Elise, great to see you.
Hey.
Thanks so much for joining us. So the context, as Peter's saying, is as I just had this in the moment. Back to your curiosity point, Peter. I just had this bodily urge to go, hey, it'd be really cool to have like a signature tune, and not from a point of view of like I've got this huge ego and I want to walk out into like Tony Robbins to this particular tune. Never remember who Gary Turner is. Like, I'm not Tony Robbins as much as he's doing great work, but it was more something that like, what could you help me as Peter create? And it was more that forward-looking piece. It wasn't about my history. It wasn't about my past. It's very much about now and what do I want to project. And I think that was really interesting for me. I was just like, actually, what if there was a piece of music you could create completely bespoke based on something? And I think maybe take the viewers through, what was that something? Where did you start with that process? Because I literally just came at you and went, hey, Peter, I've got this idea. And you were just like, okay, cool.
You know what? I mean, for me, it's all about a certain vibe and energy. And, no surprise, I always loved the energy that you took into all of your work, and all of the times that we were riffing on Clubhouse, or for people listening and watching, we always go back and forth, sometimes on a daily basis, but at least a few times a week, right, Gary, where we're just sending each other random audio messages and our rambling throughout the day and what our reflections are. So I had a good baseline for, what you're about and what you want to share with the world. And that was actually quite a good start for me, because sometimes when, as a musician, given too much freedom can actually be a jail sentence, because sometimes it's like, oh, where do I start? And then you feel a bit lost. But I can't really put my finger on exactly what it was, but I guess the notes that we were looking at today, right, my horrible doctor's writing, were our initial conversation where you said, would you be able to, make a piece of music commission just for me to do what I do? And I said, yeah, of course. But my starting point is always, okay, what music do you listen to in your life? What resonates with you? And what do you plan to do with it? And that's what got me excited. And I think that was a really good starting point for me, because I took that energy into the writing process. And honestly, I mean, this was one of the first tracks where even Mira, for people listening, Mira is my business partner. She was quite shocked because I actually sang on this. There's a vocal underneath this, and that's actually me. And I'm not a vocalist, so I'm not really that comfortable with singing. So that was another surprise as well, that there was a basic melody to start with initially. And I don't know if you remember, Gary, but I was back and forth and I sent you a few early ideas. And then the vocal came out very quickly. There was just a call to action, get it out there. And it was in one take. And I processed it and I just left it. And in the past, if I'm honest, I would have probably overdid it, or maybe did, 8 or 9 takes, that's not good enough, all of this. But this one was just a really good flow. And it was actually a very fluid process and a very fun process for me. Because if you remember, at each stage, I was checking in with you just to see, what do you think of this? And I would excitedly send you, the first version, and you would give feedback and say, yeah, that's going well. And then that would give me, more energy to take into the next phase of it. So for people listening, I mean, I'm not going to get into technical stuff because that's quite geeky and boring, right? But once the basic melody and the bass line and the drums were pretty much right, that's when I checked in with Gary first, and I said, look, I'm really buzzing off this. What do you think? And then I just waited a few days to sit on it and just see, it, because sometimes you can get really excited, right? Because it's me making it. And I just want to make sure that, it's got that right vibe. And I checked in with what I wrote for you as well, Gary. And obviously we were going back and forth. The word emergence popped up a lot. And the work that you do is transformational, right? It's a lot about change and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. And that's what kind of, I don't know, that's what emerged for me in the writing process. Because when I made this track, I thought it was quite modular, as we chopped it up, and just so you could use it for various different things, whether it's your podcast or social media, or, as you said, to play, a big chunk of it when you walk out to do a keynote speech or something like that.
Yeah. It's so cool. I'm actually going to share, like, I am not a StreamYard expert. Anyone watching this now or watching this back? So I'm going to try and share the screen. I don't think Peter can see this being shared, but hopefully you can.
Oh, I can see it.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So where I wanted to hold space here, we're not doing this just because Peter and I are really excited about the track, and we will come to that and share some of the track with you because we are excited about it. But it's more the journey that we wanted you to be invited into, in case it inspired you, maybe to find out more about Peter and Mira's work at the Mind Takeaway and anything linked to Peter's musical work. But more than that, it's more about, think about all the things that Peter's already, and we've already just shared. Minimal brief, simple questions, open mind, open heart, iteration. Like, none of this has been a fixed process at any point, yet we've come out with what we think is an incredible product at the end of it. And just to show you on the screen, we've got emergence here. We've got connect, build, guide, amplify. A load of culture people, a load of things I was looking to try and achieve. And where we're going with this is, I really wanted this track, and I'll just stop sharing. I just wanted this track to be something that I felt I could embody, so I could feel the track, not think it, which is what we've been conditioned over hundreds of years to believe is the only way to process. Is actually, how would it feel for me to listen to this track going into a business meeting, or listen to this track going for a walk with my dog? What did it feel like to truly embody what Peter created for me, so that then it allowed me to show up as the whole unashamed version of me? And I'm just really, really feel that you've succeeded with it, Peter. And I just really wanted to share the scribbles, which I'm glad you shared very recently, because it's as far away from what we think is linear, like scripted, planned to the nth degree. Like, if COVID's shown us nothing in the last 15 months, it's be a bit more like this.
Well, you know what? I mean, it was a blessing for me. So thank you, Gary, because, okay, no surprise, we've got to know each other. So that makes it more fluid. And we've cultivated a relationship between each other, which for me has always been enjoyable. I don't know about you, but that really helped. And the fact that you said that creatively, once you'd shared your brief and what you wanted to do with it, you trusted me 100% to get on with it. And that's very freeing as an artist. And yeah, some artists might get a bit scared by that because they want more structure. But for me, that was like a wonderful call to action, because sometimes, and there's no right or wrong. Sometimes the client has quite a structured brief because there's a good reason for that. It has to be a certain way, and that's okay too. But this was just a unique, as you said, a unique one-off opportunity where it made sense for you to connect with me and ask if I could make some music. And I'm humbled by that, because I mean, I've got nothing on it. I don't want to say it's good or not. It's for you as the person that asked for the music, the client, but also that's for me. The yardstick for me is, does it do what you wanted it to do? And when you came back and the kind of words you used and the feedback you gave me, I was humbled. And that's always a nice feeling, And equally, even if it wasn't quite there, that's okay too, because I'm quite used to, being able to switch it up if something's not quite there or something doesn't quite resonate with the person I'm working with, you know. But yeah, as you said, Gary, this was just a wonderful, fluid, natural, creative process where what emerged, I was actually quite surprised, if I'm honest, because I didn't really, how can I say this? I didn't quite make or plan to make that particular track, if that makes sense. So what came out, I was like, wow, okay, interesting. But like I say, it wasn't like, wow, I'm so great, look at this. It was like, wow, that's exciting. Let's explore that more. And that's when the first feeling I got from that was when I was like, okay, I'm going to contact Gary. I'm going to bounce a rough mix of it just so you can see the vibe of it right now. And then, it was for me to check in with you and just see if that was in the ballpark. And I think that's what made it exciting, right, Gary? Because that back and forth gave me more momentum. And then every time I added a bit more, you would obviously, either rubber stamp it or say what you needed to say. And then that's how it kind of came out. And for people listening, I mean, for me, the creative process wasn't always like this, right? I mean, we talked about this, Gary. I used to make a lot of house music and techno, and I was a DJ before. And I used to get quite stressed and a lot of anxiety when I used to write music because I used to feel a lot of pressure. And I had a break of commercially nearly, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. And then, funny enough, about 6 months before you approached me, Gary, I've been very active again. As you can see, there's a lot of machines behind me. I'm building a live show, but I'm just enjoying it. The first and foremost for me is, am I still getting a buzz from this creative process? And if that's working for me, then the output's going to be, no surprise, a lot better than when I think back in the past where I had such a weight, like a ton of bricks on top of me and pressure. And that just stifles the whole creative process, right? But that's for anything, not just making music. If you want to innovate, then yeah, the pressure, I know there's always a time pressure, right? But that aside, if you're feeling under pressure or you're feeling that something like that, it's usually going to stop you coming out with something wonderful. Or at least that's my take on it.
So here's something, right, which I think is really interesting. I know that you do this in part of your Mind Takeaway work. We're here to talk about the music, but I want to bring this to life for people that are watching us as well. Like, what was the difference between where you were in that ton of bricks feeling in that moment, oh my God, the pressure, and this process? Because you're still Peter, you're still on this planet, you're still breathing the same oxygen. So what changed?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm still the same Peter that sometimes gets stressed and gets angst and all of that, especially, if I'm on my own in the studio. But I just see it as more of a cosmic joke now. And this is exactly, oh, hello, Mira.
Timing, Mira, timing.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, and I think, as Mira's just said in the comments, when you start to enjoy and just be grateful for having those moments, because life is, it's all about feelings. There's feelings and thoughts. It's like a roller coaster, right? So I just accept whatever I'm feeling. It is what it is. I try and change it. And there's some days I'll be in the studio and I'll be in the writing process and I'm just not feeling it. And actually, the old Peter would be like, let's quit. Let's sell the studio. Silly thoughts, and let's just. Or I'll be telling myself I'm a no good musician. I'm rubbish at my craft, and all this stuff. All humans tell themselves, and that still happens now and again. But I'm actually really quick to snap back now because I'm just like, that's hilarious. After I notice it, I'm like, wow, okay, not a problem. And nowadays, if something creatively doesn't work for me, I just stop. I go outside, I go for fresh air, I go and work out, have some food, speak to Mira. Usually and again, I'm not saying this as a strategy for people with listening and watching, but just change the state of where you are, and that usually shifts your state of mind. Because I know there's a lot of mindset talk these days, which is very popular. But unless you're in the state of mind, which is clarity, you can't really create. There's lots of noise that gets in the way, or at least that's, been my experience anyway. I don't know what you think about that, but
yeah. Thank you, Peter. Like 100% resonates. 100% resonates. Again, please go and check out Peter's LinkedIn profile if you want to have a chat with him, and also him and business partner Mira run the Mind Takeaway. They've actually had an incredible podcast recently with a couple of twins, which just blew my mind. So go and have a listen to the Mind Takeaway. But it totally resonates what you're sharing with me, and the reason being is I've had my own experience in the last 5 years, Peter, and everyone watching, where and again, this is not to say there's no right or wrong, as Peter said. So important when we have these sort of conversations. There's no right way. There is there's just now, literally, like, and you've just got to see what's happening for you. But I do remember very clearly, and it was actually on day 2 of a retreat back 3 years ago. I had this sudden pub garden, lovely weather like today, and I just went, oh my God, it wasn't my boss that was bullying me that caused me to burn out. It's the stories I told myself about me not being good enough and being bullied again over 6 months, revving up. And I went bang. So whilst that outside world thing was definitely not acceptable, it didn't cause me to tell myself the stories I told myself. And that was just a moment of absolute clarity, to use your language. And again, different people experience this different ways. But what happened? I was still Gary Turner. I still had the same blood, the same flesh, the same oxygen I was breathing. Just in that moment, I was in an environment where my mind was free enough to go, oh, you don't need to do that to yourself anymore. And it was so it wasn't even like this sort of come to Jesus moment. It was just a very obvious idiot. Ha ha ha. You can laugh at yourself about that now. You don't have to take that experience so seriously anymore. So really,
you've hit the nail on the head, honestly. I mean, the more that you put fun into stuff, and again, I'm not saying being frivolous, because, you know, sometimes you have to be serious in the world of business, right? And act with integrity and show up so people see that they can trust you, you know, that they mean what they're doing, right? But the best leaders I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, they're just fun, light-hearted, loving people. And the more that comes into business, and especially for me as a creative, because a lot of creatives tell themselves, you know, there has to be angst and everything has to be rubbish. And, you know, that can work for the creative process sometimes. But for me, I'm just in a nice space. And the more that I'm loving myself like self-care, I don't mean I love me. That sounds egotistical, right? But I'm just saying that the more I'm checking in and just saying, okay, I might not feel great right now, no problem. And that, as soon as I'm telling myself that, and I have a chuckle, and okay, it's interesting, I'm thinking that right now, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to crack on in a bit. And that's all I do, you know. I guess it's more about awareness. That's the best way I can explain it. That the more you explore this, the more curious you are about how you turn up and your thoughts and feelings in the moment, the more that it doesn't make sense to try and change something, right? And I can think of meetings, right? You know, when I was thinking about being a leader in a corporate world, I'd think about some crazy stuff walking into a meeting. And in the past, if I connected that with something outside, like it's my team's fault, or it's my my peers' fault, or my boss's fault, it would usually be quite destructive, or, you know, the wheels would come off, or it'd have no impact. But as soon as I was like, okay, I'm allowed to think that way, but I'm not going to share that with the public. I'm just going to go into that meeting and I'm going to be compassionate. It's a whole new world, right? And then I was like, wow, you can have so much more impact in that way. But that's not to say that sometimes I put my foot in it, because you will, right? And that's okay too. Yeah. I mean, you can't not, you know, sometimes you feel what you feel and it pops out and you might annoy someone. But I guess the best thing to do is just to own up to it, right? And just say, yeah, my bad. I'm back in the room now. I still love you. Sorry about that.
Love that so much. Look, let's I can't look at that. We've already flowed. Look, this is what happens when you're having great chats with awesome human beings. You go, oh my God, it's 19 minutes out of 30. So let's put in the tune. Let's put in the tune, Peter. We've not done this before. Mobile phone, live TV. Let's see. This is it. It's called Kaleidoscope, bespoke for moi. Peter just literally said, what are the tunes? And I gave him This Is Me from The Greatest Showman, a few dance tracks that are meaningful to me. And this is what emerged. Like, pretty amazing. Let's see if it works. Here we go. So that's the dubbed down version. This is the one where I actually plug in the stereo Peter Griffiths, because I was charging up my laptop and it gets a whole lot better. This is in the moment live TV.
You've got some setup there. Yeah.
So here it comes. Here we go. So this is Kaleidoscope. I'm trying to do that.
You know what just occurred to me then? I just got a wonderful feeling when I heard that. And it's got nothing to do with, oh, whether it's good or whatever, right? That's subjective. But for me, it's, again, when I listen to stuff I made in the past, like a lot of the stuff I released on record, I could feel the angst in it straight away. Like the psychological state I was in, it was like not good, you know? And it's a totally different way of looking at it. And I know music is very emotional, you know, it's subjective. Some people will listen to a very happy track and maybe feel sad because it reminds them of a situation, and vice versa. You know, I know people, wonderful people who are into death metal, and they're the most loving, heartwarming people in the world, you know.
It's really nice that you mentioned that as well, because when I listen back to this again, like, I'm very playful, as you know, like I am a dancer. I love sort of trance and dance music. But what this means, that little section we just played there, it is, one of my keywords was emergence. Like, whatever I'm becoming in the next 1 month, 10 years, 50 years, whatever that is, this feels like a really transitional point for me in terms of the work I'm going to be doing. And what the track really, I don't just think emergence and like connectivity and collaboration, which are all the things that I really wanted to feel through the track, but they're not all words that were explicit, which I think is really interesting. So what you've created, and it's not because I'm attaching and going, oh, I wanted it to be collaborative, therefore I'm going to attach a collaborative to the feeling. It's actually completely the other way. Like I feel like it represents exactly where I'm going, which is quite fascinating. But you know, but a bodily sense, like I can feel that it's representing where I want to be going, not just think about that. I think it's representing where I'm going. So it's, yeah, honestly, mate, it's stunning. And I want to play a bit more of the track before we finish off. But it's just, you're a talent, man. Like I invite people to go. Seriously,
very kind of you to say so.
No,
and it's humbling to hear that, and it's always great when you know.
It's true. But
if you're happy, I'm happy. So,
but the thing we want people to get out of this conversation, we're actually dropping some real value through some of the stuff we're talking about around this clarity of mind stuff. But from what I really hope people take away from this is, oh my God, what would it be like if I went to Peter or to Mira or to someone else in my network? I don't have many people actually in my network that are Black and men. That's where I was like a couple of years ago. What could I learn if I got curious about how that person's lived on the planet in the last 40 years? Like you could get a similar feeling. Like it doesn't have to be music. It might be a connection with another human. It might be learning something from a book, but it's just that openness to go, how can I be courageous and just step into something completely unknown? And this is what resulted from that process. Step into something completely unknown.
Yeah. Well, my best take on it, the universe is conscious, right? So all of these connections you make, go figure. You know, it's like, yeah.
That's a really good point. And how about for you, Peter, going through this journey, like where you are right now? Okay, we've done this track. Have you got any sort of additional fuel, or is it sort of, how's it influenced you going through the process for you as Peter? Because obviously you've done it for me as a client, but what's been that sort of happy benefit for you as Peter?
Well, that aside, and you know, doing it as a professional, it was also great for me for my personal life. I mean, you can ask Mira about this because like Mira put in the comments, I'm just having more fun and showing up, and there's a lot more lightness and love going into it. And I know it sounds a bit wooey and like whatever, you know, but truthfully, if that's how you show up in everything that you do, there's just more traction. There's just, I wouldn't say everything's easy because it's not, you know, life gets in the way sometimes and things can be challenging. But what if I was to say that's just a frame of reference, it's all made up. And the more that I'm looking in that direction of, okay, do you want to do this? Is it fun? For me is, you know, am I curious enough to carry on doing this? And if the answer is yes, that's usually the direction I look in. So yeah, thank you, Gary, because even aside from making that track, it's just apparent to me now that I'm going to carry on making a lot more music. That's definitely not something I'm going to stop because I'm quite, you know, I'm chuckling the fact that I even had such a long break. I mean, for people watching and listening, I didn't stop, But I had this story I was putting out there to my friends and people that know me saying, yeah, I'm not going to release my music again. This, the music seems evil and all this stuff that came out. And now I just think that's quite funny. It's very innocent. I was just a bit lost at sea. And yeah, there are challenges with any industry. But I'm guessing if you go into it with a lot of lightness and fun and you're just, in your element, like I say, when I made this track, that's when you get more impact. And no surprise, if you're putting that energy, I don't know if you've thought about this, but we made a podcast episode about time management versus energy recently. And this is the same thing. When I used to time manage sessions in the studio or my time that way, it was really stressful. But as soon as I'm like, I've put this block aside for Gary, I'm going to have the first go at this track. I'm excited. This is what I want to take in. Oh, what did Gary want in it? And just to look at that sheet of paper and go, that's what I'm going to take into the studio. It's a whole different world. It's so much easier doing that than putting that kind of pressure on yourself. And I'm not just talking about music. This is everything, I don't know if that made sense, but
it massively makes sense. And I wanted to really highlight a point here again, because I think this comes back to the thing around intention setting as well. So why is that important? Because I remember the conversation we had and you said, when do you want this done by, Gary?
Yeah.
And I said to you, if you could do it by the end of the month, that'd be great, i.e. June. Yes, this is a conversation we had no more than 3 weeks ago or thereabouts. And you'd come back to me within basically 72 hours with the first sort of play at it because you were so energized.
Yeah.
So isn't it funny, that oxymoron of not a time bound thing, not a smart objective, just it would be great if you could reach it by here. You felt the energy of love and care and curiosity and trust and I just want to see what comes out of it. And because you felt that energy, you jumped on it.
Well, honestly, Gary, remember what I said that. And again, I'm not having a go at clients to work with, but sometimes when it's micromanaged from the client side, and I think anyone will know this, not just music related, when you're given a brief to do something creatively, it's kind of hard and stifling if someone's trying to control it before you've even started, right? And that's sometimes innocently how people show up. But luckily, because I'm in the game of coaching and transformation, I could usually coach the client in a loving way. Instead of saying back off, it's what makes sense for it to be done in that way, and just checking in. Whereas before, if I'm honest, I used to get so stressed that I stopped making music for adverts and stuff like that, because you were very kind, Gary, and said you've got a month. In the professional world of making sound design and doing music for sync and adverts and stuff, they want it by yesterday usually. So for me, there was no stress, and I guess that's why it got done quicker than it normally is. Go figure, right? Because there's nothing wrong with setting the deadline, which you did. You said, I'd love it at the end of June, right? And for me, I was like, okay, I didn't really have a timeline. I didn't think, okay, I'm going to finish it by Wednesday. I just knew that I was excited and I wanted to go and have a first take on it. This is like a pre-arrangement for people watching and listening, where I would just play with the idea and really just see what emerges. I'm more of a conduit when I go in the studio. And I don't really thought about this. I've just been reminded that my ego wants to say, wow, look at that, look what I've done, and I am proud. It's great. I love making music, but can I really lay claim to that? I'm just basically like a satellite. I've received some creative energy and I've just shared it with you, Gary. And it was aligned. That's as simple as I can put it. And when you're given a brief where it's really rigid and controlled, you just don't get that impact, if that makes sense.
It's beautiful. And thanks, Rich, for coming on. Just want to point out, because you were speaking, music has the ability to change your thinking energy in a moment. Such a great reflection, Rich. Such a brilliant reflection.
Love that.
So good. So I think actually, as we're coming towards the end, I'm going to pop on. This is Gary Take 2 technology. Probably not going to end well, but I'm going to try and play another little section. If I start dancing, I'm not apologizing, but it's go and buy the track $4.99 on a. No, I'm joking.
I've heard you can throw some shapes. You've put some mileage in the clubs, right?
True. It's a good tune. The thing for me with this bit as well, for anyone that knows me, I know Rich knows me a little bit, Peter. Again, every little bit of that, I feel it in my body. I don't think it. Like that part, that little section you created there, keep popping up that bit. That little bit there, that I feel that being that is the emergence bit you captured brilliantly. It's like this calm layer, but there's something coming. You know, I can really feel that, and that for me, I really feel that at that section of the tune. So, like all those words that you picked up on, you really have created something that I can, like, yeah, it just blows my mind. It blows my mind. Like, I thought I'd have a nice track that would be cool to walk out to or use at the back of a podcast. I didn't think I would be as moved as I am by it, like at a bodily level. Like, and I just invite anyone, if they're interested as I was, do reach out to Peter and just have an exploratory chat, because it's you're going to be hearing more of this chat in the world, I think, this track in the world in different guises.
I remember, Guy, we were chatting, and you were saying, look, I've got nothing on it. I'm quite happy to have it, you know, by that time. And it just made sense. It sounded like it felt like it had to come out while the weather was good as well. And again, that's subjective, right? I don't see it as being a summer track or a winter track or any of that, because again, that's just all made up, right? But I don't know what it was. It was just like the energy and the excitement. And I thought, okay. And remember, I said that I usually can get overexcited just like any creative. So I thought, you know, I'll just park that. I'll sit in it for a few days. What's Mira saying?
Oh, that's beautiful. More I listen to the track, the more I love it. It feels free. Mira, that is a brilliant summary. Do you know something? There is an element of freedom. Kind. There is an element of freedom in the track. There, you feel, Mira, you've just given me another word, expansive. And that is a lot of what I want my work to be in the future, is how do you help expand human capability? Like, so it's that expansion piece, that freedom is massive, Mira. So thank you for sharing that. It's a really nice extra bit of clarity for me, actually.
I'm glad you like it. And you know what occurred to me as well is that, again, our work's quite aligned, right? For people listening and watching, that, you know, we both want to show up in the world and help humanity, right? And that's why I think this project was quite powerful, because I know that you're doing amazing work and how you show up. So if I'm honest, that's a lot easier to go into a project like that, knowing that I've got nothing stopping me from just showing up and being in my element to produce something for you, versus, I don't know, you know, where there might be something that's holding me back or any of that. And there wasn't any of that in this project. So for people listening, if you're in the game of transformation, it's probably makes more sense to make something like that as a collaboration. And not just talking about music, as you pointed to before, when people collaborate, that's when the magic happens, right? You know, I went in the studio, of course, but I see this as a collaboration, because we've been riffing back and forth for way before you even asked for that music, if you think about it. And I'm guessing that probably added a lot in a positive way to what actually transpired when it came out. Or at least that's what I thought. Yeah.
That's a really nice point. And you'll probably hear Winnie the Cockapoo going absolutely crazy at some point, but I won't apologize. Pandemic life. But it's really lovely what you're speaking to, because you're right. It's very easy and it's very innocent, yeah, to fall into the, yeah, Gary asked Peter this, Peter went back to the voice memo back, and it's not a back and forth in a linear way. It's a much more spiral, circular. Oh, actually, as we're exchanging a voice memo, you're doing something with the music, and then I've had another idea. So it's really important that we remember that this creativity thing is much more organic. It's not a back and forth. Gary done a voice memo, Peter came back. No, there's stuff going on all the time. And I think it's the more we can create the space for that stuff to emerge is where the goodness is, instead of thinking it's got to be this or this.
And yeah, I mean, I love what you said there. That's the most important thing for people listening. And if you want to innovate, yes, you kind of have to have a game plan, right? Because you want a product that can sell and maybe change the world or whatever. But I find that quite often I stifle my creative energy or what I can share with the world if I've got too much on it. Like, I can definitely say that about music. If I try, like, I can stifle a track or a song because I'm saying to myself internally, it must be this. Now, the way I go in is that my best guess is I would like it to have this kind of vibe. And that's what I did for you, right? I went in like, I want to take this into it. And again, it goes back to energy versus time management. And it was so much easier to write in that way. And it's so much easier for me to do the work that I do with Mira as a coach. When I show up, I'm like, well, I'd love the client to see this, but I've got nothing on it. That's for the client to have that insight if I'm okay, just to hold that space. And I think that's what I do when I make music. I don't think I know that now. I just hold space for myself. I'm giving myself the gift of just being okay with it, whatever happens. And, sometimes it doesn't come out as I want. And, it's back to the drawing board, but that's okay too for people listening. I love the fact I've gone through lots of different iterations. You don't just come out of a vacuum and suddenly everything's great, right? For people listening and watching, to innovate, you have to mess up a lot of stuff and fail often. And I can tell you, I've definitely done that. I mean, Gary, I've had lots of stories about that, right?
That's so good. And I really hope people, like I say, we've come here because we wanted to share the creative process, hope to have a bit of fun showing, our personal experience of coming to this track. But the lessons for every part of our personal and work lives, like, please, 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 I invite anyone watching, if you've been kind to join us live or you watch this back, pick out one or two, is my invitation. Pick out one or two key insights that have maybe really hit you at a bodily level. Like, oh my God, yeah, I don't experiment enough. Oh my God, I do attach quite easily to a lot of things. Maybe I'll just practice unattaching as best I can to that particular person or thing or belief. Just play with this stuff, because none of it is real, as Peter says. Like, none of it is tangible. You can't put your hand on it and go, yeah, that belief is absolutely fact, or like that job role is definitely gonna be the one that's going to make me feel good. Like, it's all just story. And like, the more we can just play with this stuff whilst acknowledging the very real challenges that have gone over the last hundreds of years, we're not discounting any of the systemic challenges we have, but right now in this moment, what can you take away from this conversation of Peter and I and go and have some fun with? Anything else, any parting comments from your side, Peter, as we wrap up?
No, just for any companies listening, if you want to improve your top line, allow more freedom and allow people to play. But again, not in a frivolous way. I'm just saying, play with the design of your products. Play with, what would it look like if we had the freedom to design stuff that's going to innovate and be regenerative? It's so much easier. And I know it's innocent. We all want to control and count, because I know, when a company gets to a certain size, there's a lot of things at play, and you know this better than me, Gary. But yeah, I mean, that just occurred to me then. Just more freedom when you can, because I know that companies can do that, because COVID has been a wonderful example of how much freedom can be allowed. And I've seen some wonderful transformations in companies just by allowing a little bit more creative freedom and trusting in your people, i.e. the employees, to have all the answers. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And something else, actually, let's just wrap up on this one. Let's make sure we do it by 40 minutes. Like, when we talk about transformation, it can seem really, really huge, right? Really huge. And sometimes it is. But I look at transformation from the point of view as well, and like micro and macro. On a micro point of view, it could be you literally getting rid of that belief that you've held on to for 40 years. That can be transformational for you. Or it might be that you completely transform an organization of 100,000 people. But I just really wanted to, sometimes that word can seem really like blasé and huge, but it can be as simple as literally shifting that belief you've held on for 40 years, and you'll find your whole life transforms. Certainly did for me. Anything else to add or challenge on that, Pete, before we go?
Brilliant. I've just loved this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Go and follow Peter's work with Mira at the Mind Takeaway. You'll find me all over the place, probably shouting too loud, being a bit bored, but you'll find a lot more about this track. And on that note, as we go to our ending broadcast, let's just hear a little bit more as we wrap up. If my tech works, that is, which means me, because I'm a human using tech. So.